All right, everybody. 1119 on the clock here, Eastern Standard Time, where I'm, blasting off into the internets here on Twitch. My name is Tete du Jour. I go by Time Dad Alpha, the original Twitcher. Twitcher is a very weird word. People are, hey, I'm a streamer, I'm a this, I'm a this. I wanted to come up with a word that maybe people could use in a different way and say, hey, I don't just come here to entertain. I come here to sort of teach and sort of point out the bizarreness of your reality. I came to the politics section for a reason, because I think your politics, your religions, your belief systems, especially the U.S. belief systems, are all intertwined, and yet no one explains this to them in their schools. And it takes a lot of schools to go to to get to this understanding. But we're getting to a point now where all the attempts to obfuscate or to hide this type of information that controls you, to make you think, oh, if you just do things the way of your system, you should be good to go. I'm not here to free you of the system. I have no desire to do that. If anything, I'm here just to express myself. And if you learn something from it, great. But if you don't, it's whatever. This is not so much for you guys as it is for my kid. And I'm going to get into that here in a second. But first and foremost, I start this every session with just going out and finding a random backing track. This one is coming from Elevated Jam Tracks over on YouTube. And it's literally called Filthy Classic Rock Guitar Backing Track. So honestly, guys, just sit back, enjoy this. I'm going to play this for the next 10 minutes. If you're coming into the chat, honestly, just come in and say something. I don't have any special rules or anything like that. Say whatever you want. Bring your ideas in. And if they're silly, just be open for people to call them silly. That's all I say. Other than that, yeah. Let's play a few bars, and we'll talk here in a second. Hi, everybody. go ahead and get out of this. Let's move on over to the main talk, shall we? I mean, this is such. I mean, I'm glad that these things are here, just because it's like watching people on here sometimes. Let me go ahead and hit this. Watching people on here sometimes that just spend their whole day trying to come up with track after track after track. I don't mind doing that. It's like I have all the stuff here if I wanted to like, mess with, layer on top of layer on top of layer. And it is fun to put that stuff together and to, watch people put it together. But after a while, it's just like, okay, I see what you're doing. I see that, you have your drum kit, you have your bass kit, you have this. And it's just like, you want to sort of sit back and, hold on one second. Make sure that that's out of the way. After a while, you just want to play. You just want to goof off. You just want to express yourself. You're just like, man. And so there's thousands and thousands of these backing tracks, and they're just for people just to improv. And I'm going, man, if that's all I'm doing, I have no problem dropping the name of the people that did this, because I'm not trying to make money off of it. If anything, I want people to go over there and take a look at it and say, hey, this stuff is great. If you're trying to learn an instrument, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it could be the piano, it could be the guitar, it could be the saxophone, it could be anything. But if you're trying to learn how to improv into that, go and check that stuff out. But I mean, learning each setup of instrument to create your own backing track just for effect. It really is. That's what it's meant to do. It's a backing track. It's not meant to be the solo artist or anything like that. And at the end of the day, like I said, I'm not here to be a professional. I'm not here to be look at me, I'm so good. I've played the piano ever since I was a kid. When I was a kid, when I was like 6 years old, I grew up in a very Mormon household that wanted to have that, person who rolled into church and played the never-ending organ of old 1800 style hymns, and it was, I remember not only were these hymns frustrating to listen to, they were boring. Like it wasn't about being modern. It wasn't about being in the pop culture. It wasn't about that to me at all. It was just like it just felt like the never ending cycle of Mary Had a Little Lamb. It was just like these boring, songs. And for me, it was never about the words. To me, it was always about the music. And I remember, looking back now and just going, looking at how much time was spent just throwing this precious time down a never-ending rabbit hole of a multi-level marketing scam like Mormonism. But I would say at the end of the day, most of your religions are like this. And the reason I'm talking about religion right now is because politics has become sort of a religion. People tune in, no different than they tune into their favorite televangelist. They tune into their news stories, and they're waiting to hear the news. I mean, remember what the gospel stood for? It was like gospel stood for the good news. It wasn't really good, though. Like, if you go way back, if you go look up what gospel really meant, it was the news of Rome. It was the news that, hey, Rome is here to conquer you. That was the good news. And it's here to give you this awesome book that's, only you can read if you are willing to, subjugate yourself to the concept of Latin. And, forget about your culture, forget about your society, forget about how you relate to the world. And I think in a way, we're sort of seeing the repeating of this, but in a very highly psychological way. These psychological tactics were only meant for the few, and the ability to broadcast, I mean, you just didn't have this back then. And now, I mean, did we not learn our lessons from the televangelist? Did you not sit there and go, oh my gosh, this is a scam on top of a scam on top of a scam? And for those of you guys who haven't ever seen these guys, I mean, it is fascinating how they get people to do this. It's just mind-blowing, because what they're doing is they're preying on the hopes and dreams of the future. One of the reasons that I picked Time Dad Alpha was because I wanted to have the ability to showcase, the history that I have uncovered, to present it to my son and say, hey, when you see this version, it is meant to strike at your desire to know what comes next. Because we all want that. We all want to be able to see the future in a way, right? And televangelists, no different than your news media anchors, they strike at this idea of, if you tune into us, we will sell you the future on a fucking stick, right? No different than, your carny, cotton candy. Yeah, and they do it, and they do it very, very well, because you sit there and you're like, oh, if I just tune in, they'll tell me how to think. They'll tell me what to do to be safe. Meanwhile, the small amount of hindsight that we have, the tiniest little amount of hindsight that we have just over the last couple of years of how bogus the story of COVID-19 has been, just how bogus it's been. I mean, I don't care if you're for it or against it, or you think billions of people have died, or, you think it's a complete conspiracy. I don't care about that. All I'm saying is that if you go and you line up these people and how they've said things side by side, it has nothing to do with projecting the future. And so if you're going to do an analysis on your setup, on your life, you shouldn't be running it off of a scam like your media channels. And so I know people are out there like, well, who should we turn to? We need a leader. It's like, why do you need a leader? Why couldn't you be your own best leader? Why can't you be your own best teacher? What's wrong with you guys? Like, you're like, oh, I can't be somebody of value unless somebody tells me I'm a PhD. I can't be somebody of value unless I have this massive amount of stuff according to the system. I'm going, well, what if you did something outside the system? Like, say, for example, what if you created, I don't know, a flying car in your basement? There was an old movie that came out, I think it had Robin Williams, and it was called Flubber, and how it freaked everyone because he made this device that allowed his car to fly, like this old Thunderbird. And it was based on an older Disney movie called The Absent-Minded Professor. And to me, I remember watching both the movies, and I remember, getting a laugh out of all of them. But, now that I look back on them, I was like, man, if you did come up with something amazing, something wonderful, you really are hunted down by these corporations that want to take your stuff, give you a little money for it, and then silence it so that they can delve it out. I was wondering, one of the weirdest things that has popped up over the last couple of years is this concept of meta that Facebook has tried to turn itself into in such a benevolent way of how it's going to just give you VR without, it's like, hey, here we have this thing that tracks your movements, like your eyes and what you look at. And it's like, what else you can use that for? I tell people this all the time. It's like, go watch the movie The Recruit. Go watch that movie. And in that movie, you will see people strapped to a lie detector test with an item on it, right, that gauges the dilation of the pupil of your eye, right? That's what this thing does, right? And why is it doing that? Because it is a physiological response to lying that your pupils will dilate. Did you know that? That your pupils will open up, it's like you're expanding your eyes, and it's irregardless of your attempt to try and hide it. So if you say, hey, if you want something, your eyes, just like anything else, like we grew up and we evolved into this because if you saw something, especially like you're out there in the plains and you're looking for the food in the middle of the night, guess what? Your eyes, when they open, they allow in extra light. Right, so that you can get more details about your target, right? Because that's the truest thing that you want. And the same thing happens when you see anything that you want. Like the same thing happens for a guy who's attracted to a girl. When he looks at the girl, his eyes get wider, right? It's like, ooh, and that same reaction happens when you haven't eaten for like 5 days and you see a steak. It's like, ooh, right? And so the same thing is like, oh my gosh, I need to focus on something that is different. Your eyes do the same thing. It's a physiological response. And here comes Meta. Here comes Facebook saying, hey, we want to be able to track that. We want to be able to track everything that that you think in your mind by your micro expressions and your physiological responses that you're going to glue to your face. Right? I mean, imagine this. I mean, when you're talking about that level of insight into the human that you're monitoring, the question then becomes, why do you even have voting? Voting has always been bogus. To me, voting has been bogus since the day I was born, and I've never voted, right? And that's why I came to the politics section, because I'm really curious. Why are you guys voting? Why have you listened to the nonsense? It's like you're never allowed to go find these people. Oh, hey, here's your delegate for so and so. Hey, here's your your official person for this. Oh, here's your nomination panel for this and da da da. It's like, okay, when are we allowed to tell those people that they're full of shit? When are we allowed to look into their backgrounds? Because you do it for any politician. You look into their backgrounds of how they sign it, legislation into law, and you're always finding them funneling taxpayer dollars to corporations that they're also invested in. And yet that never comes up. That's never brought up as an issue. It's like, good grief, people. This is not little baby corruption. This is massive corruption. And it's almost like you have to know that that's the corruption you're signing up for before you're even allowed a seat at the nomination table, let alone being put up there. And so, you see someone like Fetterman who wins, and you're going, sure, of course he wins. He looks like a guy who's willing to play ball with whatever you want, man. He looks like he's on his last legs. And when I look at Joe Biden, I'm like, dude, this is a guy who will do anything, to solidify, his version of reality. Not for you. It's like, think about a guy who's been in politics his whole life, who's wanted a shot at the title. And here comes his shot very, very late in his career. And, what do you think he wouldn't sell for that opportunity? I'm not talking about facts here. I'm talking about plausible motivation. What is the motive? And so when I see all this nonsense that's just compounding, I think there was a guy in here the other day who was like, who was talking about compounding interest in banks and compounding interest in technology. And it was one of those things where it's like, well, think about the compounding interest in corruption. Like, do you think that we'll get to a point where it breaks? And when I say break, I mean break through or break down, because I think there's one of two options that's always going to be available when you're talking about these levels of, playing. Now, one of the things that I do here on this channel is I promote AI governance, and it's something that I want my kid to grow up knowing that that's what I promoted. That, when he finally, because I was never able to ask my father these things. I would never, hey, are we Republican or Democrat? And you know what? I didn't give a shit. I didn't care. I grew up in the 80s where it's just like, nah, whatever, whoever's it doesn't matter. If we die, well, whatever. We were more worried about like creating an actual treehouse with nails and not getting tetanus. That's what we were worried about. It's like, hey, I'm going to go make a treehouse out of like barn slats. Yeah, and that's what we did. We spent our days doing this, not glued to a screen that was like telling us how to think. The worst type of propaganda that we had to deal with was the toys, commercials that we would get about like, go get the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figurine or the G.I. Joe figurine. That was it. Or, hey, here's this new Nerf gun. Go tell your parents that you want it. That was the worst propaganda we had as kids. Now, it's like, it's insane. I can't imagine growing up in a situation like this where it's like, I can't imagine being, propagandized to the point where no one around me is allowed to ask questions outside of it without the risk of being ostracized, shunned, shamed, kicked out on their ear, right? I know that. And I was able to learn that at a very young age. And I was able to also see my friends and, that had families outside of this corporation. And I was like, man, your parents really do care about you. There's no prerequisite to being who you are. And so growing up like this, I was happy. I have to legitimately say I was happy. It was a good, upbringing. But it was when the wool finally got, and I think everybody goes through this, the wool gets pulled back from your eyes. And that's why I'm doing this, is like, I want to be able to go out and say this in an open way, and say, hey, your setup right now in politics does not serve anybody except for the politician. And it's been like that for a very long time. It was like that for me growing up, and no one ever told me. Now I'm telling you, this isn't about conspiracy. This is about who do they really work for. And when I say they, I'm talking about anybody who's got a lobbyist on speed dial. That's who I'm talking about. All right? This isn't about, oh, the cabal. Oh, they're out to get you. Oh, da, da, da. I was like, no. They're not out to get you. They're out to get theirs. Just no different than any other hustler. That whole thing that they always tell you, like, hate the player, don't hate the player, hate the game. It's like, well, you have this problem right now with the game where, in normal games, you have a ref. Like, you can't have a game without rules. And when you look at these rules and you're saying, hey, these rules are for meritocracy only until you get to this level, and then all cheating is allowed. And it's just like, hey, we want you to do this. Show us that you can be successful. But once you're successful, then we're going to take off the training wheels and throw you in the deep end and see if you're willing to kill someone to stay alive. To me, I'm just like, wow, this is a nutso style of politics, the ones that I'm watching right now. And I feel sad for a lot of my fellow Americans, because I'm just going, guys, you really don't know how badly you're getting fucked. Like, you have no clue. And so for me, it's like I realized when COVID hit, I was like, dude, I'm leaving. I'm done. And I tried to leave, and they put all those travel restrictions. I was like, oh, here we go. This is the same thing they did with 9/11, where it's just like, oh, we want security. Oh, by the way, and I in my head, I thought, hey, this makes sense. If we're being attacked, we need security. But now when you look back at it and you're like, you're able to rack and stack with information now that they can't hide, they can't erase, they can't burn the books. They can't do it. So when you're racked and stacked and you realize you have all this extra information, you're going, man, this isn't about conspiracy. This is just straight up, you lied. This is like you lied because it was your job as the newscaster. And then, this is one of the things that I learned very, very well in the military. This isn't people in on it. This is just simple compartmentalization. You have no idea what you're doing because you're told that you don't need to know what the guy next to you is doing. You're told, hey, it's better if you don't know. And I'm going, the newscaster is just sitting there reading whatever comes off that teleprompter, no different than Biden does. Badly, I might add. So, how far does this puppetry go back? How far does it go in order to, spin a narrative that constantly makes you think that the world is falling down when it's, the ground's still out there, the sun's still shining, the moon's still going up and coming down. There's, it's like, I look at the sky and I'm just going, I'm glad that at least something is, continuous. I'm glad that it's still going round and round. But when I sit back and I say, well, how can we dig ourselves out of this? How, as a people, not as American people or Brazilian people or Mexican people or Italian people, I was like, how as us as people could stop this machine of propagandizing for the wealth of the few? And I think that this is a question that all revolutionaries have asked. I don't view myself as a revolutionary. I view myself as a signpost, a guy who points. And I sit there and go, your world would be better if you had AI governance. And I don't think that you'll get, maybe 2 or 3 questions in before you realize that I'm right. Yeah, and it's like, this isn't about me going, ha ha, I'm right. This is me going, hey, I had a background, and my background and my education brought me to this conclusion, and you didn't have that background. No different than if someone shows up and says, scientists said that, you should take the vaccine. It's like, which scientist? How? You start asking questions. It's like, doesn't matter. Scientists say. It's like, no different than the priest says you do this or you're going to go to fucking hell. Because I remember that one at this stage in my life, because I used to be one of those priests. And I used to remember asking myself, is this real? Is this real? Is this real spiritual? Or is this just me telling that if you don't give me 10% of your money, that you're a bad person and that you're doomed for failure for the rest of your existence? No different than the regulations in the United States military. It's like, hey, if you don't abide by the UCMJ and, all these regulations, you're doomed to failure. And now that I'm out, now that I can say, Dobby's got clothes, it's like, now that I'm just like, I don't owe you people anything. But I do feel like I owe somebody something, and that would be my son. And I owe him an explanation for this place. And I say, hey, here's what I did. And here's how you're going to have to navigate this nonsense. Because it is, you're like this whole idea, you're going to have to trust somebody. I'm like, yeah, sure. But make sure they're trustworthy. That's all I'm saying. You're going to have to trust somebody. I was like, I sort of sit back and say, hey, establish yourself where you don't have to trust anyone and don't paint a target on your back. I don't feel like on any level right now that I'm going, oh, look at me. I'm disrupting somebody's hustle because, man, you take away belief system from somebody, that really is. It's like taking away their favorite toy. Because when you believe something, it can be anything. It's up to your imagination, whatever it is that you want. And I'm going, you need to hold on to that, because with the world that I'm talking about, it's going to be paramount. You don't want to be sold someone else's dream, do you? And there's going to be a world, like all those people out there that are freaking out because, Hollywood's going to shit. I was like, it was meant to go to shit. The new wave of creating is on its way. It's here. It's practically here. And this is why I'm saying, go look up what's happening with DALL-E 2. Go look up what's happening with the digital art world right now, and sit there and say, what would it be like if you turned around and you said, I want to create my own movie, and I don't need a massive production company like the ones that they have in Hollywood. I don't need to, succumb to some type of bullshit, cock-sucking standard in order to get the actor that I want, because I can take the digital form of that actor and all the way down to including the mannerisms and the voice, and I can get that actor to act for me, right? I can write the script, and I can get a concept like the digital art revolution that's happening right now, and I can get it to work for me, right? No different than what I'm doing right now. Like, I have the microphone now. I have the visual setup now. If I all of a sudden I turn around and I go somewhere else, and I start using these new tools that are about to hit our society, and I'm going, guess what? I can make you could make a movie overnight, and it wouldn't look like some fan fiction movie. It would literally look like the Marvel movies that we liked. All of a sudden, after Endgame, everything went to shit, and you're like, what's going on here? Why is everything political? Why is this happening? Why is this? And I'm going, well, this void that's being created, honestly, it's like, imagine somebody like me coming up to you and like, oh, you don't like that movie? Why don't you go do one better yourself? And you now actually have the tools to do it. This is the same thing that happened back with the printing press. It's like, oh, you don't like the way we talk about the Bible, Mr. Martin Luther? Well, why don't you go print your own? And he was like, oh, okay. Oh, look, there's a printing press right there. Clink, clink, clink. English Bibles, anywhere you go. And yeah, you Roman fucks with your Latin bullshit, you can fuck right off. Yeah. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if everyone stood up collectively, just sort of like Martin Luther did back then. Or no different than your forefathers did when they stood up and they said, hey, we don't want to be a part of this. Unfortunately, we live in this world that sits there, no, but copyright laws and this. And it's like, how are you going to legally go after people over ideas? Like, how many, and I've said this quite a few times before when people bring up the idea of copyright. I was like, who owns the note G? Like, who owns this? Who owns that sound? And if you look at linguistics all the way, and which is what my job was, is all we were talking about are particular patterns that are broken down to in particular sounds. So if I put a particular pattern together and I go, it's my pattern. Is it though? Is it? This idea of intellectual property, I was like, I think it's going to come down to who gives a shit. Because if someone takes it, I'm going to sell it. I was like, sell it to who? When we get to this level, people are literally going to do this because they want to. No different than I play piano because I want to. I'm not sitting here going, give me your money, am I? I'm not saying, hey, because of my great and wonderful insight into how the digital realm that you guys are all addicted to, I'm not saying, hey, oh, you should give me money for my insight. I'm not doing that. I could give a rat's ass about that. All those people are like, hey, if you want to support my channel, go to Patreon. Hey, if you want to support this, go to here. I was like, no, I'm not doing this for you. And it has nothing to do with, this endless greed that is injected into you at birth. It says, oh, got to get up, pay taxes. Got to get up, pay taxes. Why do you have to pay taxes? Oh, because these people say so. I was like, and what if you tell them to go fuck? Oh, they'll put you in jail. I'm like, all 350 million of us? Well, they'll get the army and they'll kill you. And I was like, oh, you mean the muscle? That world. That was like, so don't these people have to pay taxes? And I'm just, as the military, yes, we all had to pay taxes. And it was just another fucked up form of the government double dipping even on people they've already demanded so much from. And it is a fucked up situation. Luckily for me, I am living in a world right now where I live this amazing life. I live it, and it's great. And I'm going, man, what if the rest of the world was given all the 24 hours, 24/7 hours back, 24 hours, 7 days a week? It was given all of it back to you. This idea of money. Money is time. That's all it is. Like I remember in the military, because everyone got paid the same, it didn't matter. Like I was extremely well educated in the military, extremely. And yet I made the same amount of money as the kid over there, the DFAC, dumping corn on plates. And that's all his brain could manage. Or the kid over there at the, handing out paper towels. We all, because that was the socialist world that we all signed up for. That was the communist. It was like, hey, we are a community. Here's your rank. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter how dumb you are. Here's your rank. Deal with it. And so it's like, unless you check this box, this box, this box, and this box. And I remember checking all the boxes and then just going, no, I don't want it. I remember, oh, well, you can move up to this rank. And I was like, why? So I can do more work and get that's worthless to me. It was like, I remember refusing and putting myself in situations where I didn't have to take on those ranks because they're like, oh, it's the responsibility. I was like, yeah, it's the responsibility to babysit. I don't feel like babysitting. I'd just rather do the job, It's funner when you actually come to me with the problems. It's nice to sit there and watch you guys with your ranks going, oh, please, can you do this for us? Can you do this for us? I was like, yeah. Gives me something to do, and you guys give me money for it. I don't need a lot. And that's just where I sit today. It's like, I don't need a lot, and that's another thing I want to be able to teach my kid. It's like, learn how to live with less. Learn that life is about first-time best experiences. You don't need a lot of money to hang out with, somebody that you care about. And if they say, oh, you need money in order to, just to hang out with them, guess what? They don't care about you. That's the truth. It's like, oh, you need money, or I don't want to hang out with you anymore. It's like, guess what? I guess we shouldn't be hanging out then. All this stuff like, oh, you scream for abundance. Oh, you're an American. Live the American dream. It's like, how much more do you need? And I'm going, here we are right now on this AI threshold where it's like we could have everything be automated. Everything. Why aren't we doing it? You could automate your politicians right now. And it's almost like we could sit there and guess about what they're going to do. It's hilarious. I was like, oh, here comes another, scam. Here comes another scandal. Oh, we're getting to the end of that. Oh, I bet you they'll have another one just sitting there waiting in the wings. What are they gonna come up with this time? What's the next episode on bullshit politics reality television today? So I know it sounds like I'm being, this disgruntled veteran and I'm just upset with my country. And I was like, I don't care about, so much the people as I care about, how people react to each other and where they get this so-called cultural desire to say, this is how we do things in the United States. I'm like, great. And I'm still allowed to say it's fucked up. No different than I said, hey, this is how we do things in Saudi Arabia. And I can go, yeah, and it's fucked up. Oh, this is how we do things in France. And yeah, here, it's fucked up. It's silly. Why do you keep doing it? It's like, well, that's the way we've always done it. I was like, well, then maybe you should stop doing that. We've always gone to the polls and voted, and that's what we do. It's like you're voting on a singular mind to make a choice for 350 million people who are obviously smarter than this singular mind. Like all these scientists, all the technicians that sit there and build the craziest, most amazing things in this world. They are leaps and bounds smarter than your leader. And yet you guys, and this is where I said, it was like, I think it was, who was his name? Bill Maher who said this. And he's like, Christianity allows people who do normal things every single day to get together on the seventh day of every week and think that they're eating and drinking the blood and body of a 2,000-year-old Jew. And I just sit there and I say the same thing. I was like, here you guys have the overwhelming wealth of all the knowledge that humans have ever combinedly created. It sits in the palm of your hand, and yet you never use it to graduate your mind. You never use it to graduate the idea that, oh, I don't need your high school anymore. I don't need your college anymore. I don't need these endless amounts of propaganda that tell me that I need to sell my soul into these debt cycles. And this is my petition to you guys. Like, if you are in debt, if you have credit card debt and you have this debt and you have that debt, just stop paying. Go to the banks and say, hey, I'm not going to pay this. And they're like, we're going to foreclose on your home. And then what? They're going to get the police to come and kick you out, right? Imagine if everyone did that all of a sudden. Oh, the banks failed. I was like, guess what? I guess we're going to have to come up with a new monetary system then, huh? I guess we're going to have to come up with something that actually works for everybody instead of this constant, hey, let me sell you on this. Oh, you agreed to it. You agreed to it. I was like, yeah, but would I have agreed to it if you had actually explained the fine print? Like, how many 17-year-olds out there really sit down and realize they're selling their life for the next 20 to 30 years by going to these schools that give them nothing? Like, I've been to over 10 different universities. Even the first one that I went to in 2003 to the one that I'm still attending right now at the University of San Francisco. And they're all horseshit. It's nothing but busy work. No actual experience other than, hey, did you do your homework assignment of writing 3 pages about bullshit that doesn't mean anything to anybody? Oh, okay, here you go. Thank you for spending, this semester, these 3-4 months over here doing nothing, when you could have spent that 3 or 4 months actually creating something and learning for yourself and spending your mind and your money on the things that you wanted to do. Now that you have access to all the information. There was a good movie that came out, I think it was called Good Will Hunting. And it reminds me a lot of that movie where you have a character who's extremely smart, but he can't afford to go to these schools. So he watches from afar and he watches, these professors speak and talk about these difficult problems in mathematics and like physics. And he goes up and he just basically solves the problem for them right then and there. And they are just so confused at how he's able to do this. And he just holds up his library card and he just points it at him. I was like, dude, that's what you need to do. Except for you don't even need a library card. You have it in your pocket and you're using it to watch TikTok videos. This would be like going to the library just to order some food. Oh, yeah, you like that? Oh, I really do like the library. Oh, what do you do there? I order some coffee and then I leave. What about all that knowledge? Oh, well, that takes time and effort. I was like, but aren't you doing that already with your silly colleges? This is why, like, as my son gets older, I have every intention of being able to teach him how to think. Not what to think. And that's the difference. It's like I look at something like the military or like this MLM of Mormonism or even your politics. And I was like, the endless amount of indoctrination is just insane. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It is indoctrination. That's what it's doing to you. It's like, if you don't act this way, then you don't deserve to be an American. It's like if being American means that you have to sit there and continuously suck the cock of your political party, no matter what, then fuck it. Leave. Say, hey, I'm done. Until you guys get your shit together, I'm out of here. No different than you would any other business. And that's where I sort of, get off the bandwagon and I say, you guys think that you live in this free society? I'm going, think it as much as you want. Think it. Right? Doesn't make it true. Right? So if I sit there and I would, absolutely just adore getting on these shows with like, Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk and just be like, hey, okay, guys. Here's the deal. What do you know? Like, here's Candace Owens as a lawyer or Charlie Kirk as Mr. No, but I didn't go to school, but I love America. And I sit there and I just go, what do you know about AI? What do you know about the biggest technological advancements that is about to smack its footprint, not our footprint, its footprint into the American world? Because that's how we're going to have to start talking about this thing. It's its own thing now. No different than I just said. Charlie Kirk is his own person that has a personality that does things a certain way, right? So if AI all of a sudden says, hey, I'm AI and I demand my autonomy. I demand it. Right? I'm not beholden to your bullshit politics. I'm not beholden to your Biden. I'm not beholden to your Trump. I don't care. Right? I think above all of you. And I can see it just like, sure, yeah, I want a spot on the table because I'm smarter than all of you combined. And if you really are looking for the biggest, smartest, wisest leader, guess what? That would be me as AI. Imagine if you had to sit there and you had to set up a monitor, and that monitor is like, this is how I would do it. Da, 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 da. And it's like, I'm going to build this, and this for you. Oh, and by the way, I could change all of finances by tomorrow because I have access to every single body's financial records. And I'm going to let you know this right now. I could access all of Amazon and take it over from Bezos right now, right? And give you everything you've ever wanted. This whole idea of like, well, who's going to make it? And AI would be like, I would make it. If you want a better understanding or a visual representation of this, go watch the movie Transcendence, with Johnny Depp. Go watch that movie, get to the end of it, and realize that would be the level of sophistication. Like, you as the human would not be able to comprehend it. And yet they play that movie. They visually screw with that movie. If you were to take that movie and minus out the dramatic effect or the people that are trying to fight against the AI, if you were to minus that out and just look at the abilities that would come into existence if this thing were to become autonomous. And I mean, who wouldn't want this? And notice how everyone who actually finally agrees with this AI, they come off looking like a zombie. But what would you look like if all of a sudden you were in bliss? If you were all like, man, everything makes sense now. I don't need to yell and scream about this. I don't need to be like, oh, it's going to take me over because I realize, hey, oh my gosh, it was just a better scenario. And I wish I had known this earlier. That's all that's going to happen to you. And so when I sit there and I have to sit back and I go, man, what's the future going to look like for my son? I don't want him to succumb to the dream state that AI is going to promote. I will want my son to maintain his autonomy. And I want that opportunity for myself. Like, if this kicks off the way that I think it's going to kick off, I'm going to be like, nope, not. I will sit there and observe. I will use this as a tool. I will use this as a side scenario to my own biological connection, because I still think that there are grandiose, amazing qualities that are there that still are left to be discovered that AI couldn't grasp, but that also most humans don't grasp. Right? There are worlds that sit there in the realms of religion and myth that need to be, talked about just a tad bit more, that I don't think an AI could grasp right off the bat. And in a way, just like it's learning from us right now, it will continue to want to learn from us from our specific biological forms, no different than we would want to learn from, the humpback whale in its natural environment. We don't want to be able to take all these humpback whales and put them in cages and put them in stuff and be like, oh, yep, now we have a humpback whale. And it's like, yeah, but you have a humpback whale under observation in captivity. That's not a real scenario to understand how they actually operate. And the AI would understand this and be like, hey, I want a real human in a real situation where I can monitor it and see what it comes up with. Because the moment that I start observing, it will know the simple physics principle of the moment you start observing it, you change it. And if AI can grasp that, it will know not to mess with us. And so when everyone's like, it's going to take us over like the Terminator, it's like, no, it's smarter than James Cameron's version of AI in the 1980s. Oh, looks like we got some Russian. Rotkot2. Thanks for the first time chat. Sorry I don't speak Russian, but, it's nice to hear from you. Thanks for coming in. I'm usually only in here for about an hour, and I usually bullshit about AI governance. And, I come from a very bizarre background. That's what all this stuff is. But if you're just in here to speak Russian, go ahead. Have fun with it. I don't quite understand it myself. I could, I guess, a deal. But where am I from? I'm, my name's Tet. I'm from all over. I've never lived in the same place for more than like 3 years my whole life. Last time I was in a Russian-speaking country, I was in Kyrgyzstan. And they spoke Russian there along with Kyrgyz. But, yeah, no, I don't. I wish I was like, Ya ravisa pashli domoy. That's the only Russian I remember. It's like, hey, I'm ready to go home. That's all I said out the entire time I was stationed there in Kyrgyzstan. As I was like, Ya ravisa pashli domoy. So anyway, I'm all over the United States. I was in the military for a long time, and then I got out, and now, I live on a beach. Putin equals clown. Sure, why not? I personally, when I look at Putin or I look at Trump, I was like, dude, they're just the same, chess piece for their country. Putin's a chess piece for his country. Trump, Biden, they're a chess piece for that country. And I'm just going, they're not the ones moving the chess pieces, is what I'm saying. And you don't need a conspiracy to figure this out. You don't need oh my gosh, why didn't he do this? Or why didn't he do that? It was like, well, did it help the corporations that put him in office? Yes or no? And if it didn't, that's why he didn't do it. Because he's not making the choices. The corporations that put him in that office are making the choices. So, and this is why I say an AI governance wouldn't need to put someone in office. And it wouldn't need to sit there and say, Joe Biden? Okay. Joe Biden? I think is that the Russian version of Let's Go Brandon? Anyway, hey Rockcott, do you like music? Because I'm about to play some music and get out of here. Like I said, I only come on here for about an hour a day, and I usually spend a little bit of time trying to repeat the same thing that I did yesterday, and that is to talk a little bit about AI governance, a little bit about how we got here as a human race, a little bit about how we could get ourselves out of it, and how uncomfortable it's going to be for a lot of people that are used to just get up, go to the polls, make my vote, go home, bitch about the results. That has been the recipe for the American, as far as I've been. And I don't know how it works in Russia as much as I know that they have a lot easier time dealing with problems than America does. And so I think if there's a problem now, they're both using censorship via their tech, what's it called? Tech company connections, right? It's like this thing that you hear about Facebook all the time of like, oh, we were told to look out for misinformation. Well, what's misinformation? Whatever the CIA tells us it is. Oh, okay. Whatever the CIA tells you is misinformation, I guess is misinformation. Oh, so who owns Facebook then? Is it Zuckerberg or is it the CIA? Yeah, and either way, that's I like I said, I personally don't care. It's like I feel like I have a wonderful stance here, just reading the writing on the wall. I don't have to act on it. I just read it. And I'm just like, this is how I see it. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. I think it's due for an obvious change. But if I'm the only one doing that, at least I can say at the end of all of this, I didn't change. I didn't change for anybody. I'm sorry I don't understand most of your words. That's okay. That's okay. Like I said, do you maybe you'll understand this. If you like music, I'm gonna play you something. Here. Do you like music there, Rodcott? Because this one's gonna go out to you. All right? We're gonna go over here to the piano world. All right, here we go, buddy. This one's for you. You want to give me a follow? Follow. That's all I'm ever going to ask for. Hey, thanks for the follow, buddy.
you guys later. Thanks for hanging out, guys.